This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 872, recorded on Wednesday, April 20th, 2022. Going cuckoo for Earth Day. Hey there, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on the show, we will fill your head with cuckoos, cookies, and cancer. But first, thanks to our amazing Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. You can become a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/thisweekinscience.
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Hello, science, my old friend. Come to talk with you again about research softly creeping, newly published while we were sleeping, and the stories implanted in our brains, they still remain within the sound of This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science. What's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science.
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And the good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are here. Yes.
Yeah.
Science, our old friend. Maybe to some of you it's a new friend, but science is always a friend. So let's have some friendly conversation about all the science from the past week. I have stories of import. Well, excitement, because you know what? Today is International Cuckoo Day, but I'm not talking about that at all because Earth Day is coming on Friday. So I've got some Earth-based stories to remind us about this incredible planet that we live on. I've got some acceleration. What else did I have? Oh, yeah. I have the cookies that were in the front there. I've got COVID and a lack of imagination.
So sorry to hear that.
Justin, what did you bring?
I've got a couple of sound stories.
Right.
A 500 million year old camera.
That's old.
And finally a good use for turmeric.
Finally? I use it in all the things. Come on, turmeric's great.
Not a big fan of the curry.
Okay, I love the curry. Blair, tell us about the animal corner.
Oh, I have rhinos, and I also have cuckoos.
Yes!
Yes.
I knew you could do it for us on this International Day of Cuckoo-ness.
And then I also brought a story that it turns out you guys talked about when I missed a show, so I'm going to have something else in the first part of the show. It'll be a surprise.
I'm so sad that you figured that out, because I always like it when somebody takes a week off and then is doing that, because then it's the job just to
I looked before I did my research last week, but I forgot from last week to this week. And there's always a lag for certain journals to publish things. So it looked like this week's news to me. Oops.
It's old news. It's old news. We just want the new news.
Oopsie.
And now nobody knows what news we have been noodling about. On the show tonight, we have so much science, so I do hope that you will consider subscribing. You can find us on all podcast platforms, pretty much, not all of them, but we're out there. Look for This Week in Science. We also broadcast weekly at 8 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. We are TWIS Science, TWISCIENCE, on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram. And if all of this is just making your noodle more noodlier, then head over to twis.org, where you can find show notes and links to all of these places. And with that done, let's dive into the news. All right, as I mentioned, Earth Day is right around the corner, so let's start out the show with a little reminder about our wonderful planet Earth. Climate Central does a great job of telling us about the important changes that are occurring in the science that is helping us understand the changes to climate going on. And as always, they have posted ahead of Earth Day, taking stock of, as they say, widespread warming in 246 U.S. locations, 49 states, and the nation since 1970. Why 1970? Well, that was the year that we first celebrated our planet, the first year of Earth Day celebrations. Since then, the United States has warmed by 2.6 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just almost, but not quite, to that 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, which would be about the 1.5 degrees Celsius equivalent warming that the IPCC has warned against. So we're getting there. 49 states and 99% of 246 U.S. cities have warmed since 1970. The fastest warming city. This is your trivia for this week. Do you know what city it was?
I feel like it's gonna be a place that was already hot, but maybe that would be it would be a place that was cold. It would be a place that was cold. That's cool.
This one, actually, I was very surprised at. Reno, Nevada is the fastest warming city in the United States. But the fastest warming state is
Alaska.
You got it.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. The fastest warming state is Alaska, and many northern states are experiencing a lot of warming, but really the Southwest is experiencing the largest amount of warming since 1970, other than Alaska being so far north. So we've got an increase in the concentration of heat-trapping gases and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide has increased almost 30% since 1970, and temperatures are increasing, as we've been talking about. There is work that we can do. You can look into Earth Day celebrations near you. You can find, if you head to earthday.org, earthday.org is a great organization that is actually doing an all-day celebration. They're going to be doing webinars and all sorts of stuff all day long. And there are events all over the United States and around the world to allow you to take place in Earth Day. So this Friday, find your way to an Earth Day event or join the Earth Day organization online. Their theme this year is investing in our planet, because we do need to invest in it. We need to innovate and implement and make changes moving forward, because we only have one Earth.
So
I don't think there's any controversy about that at this point in time.
No. There's not.
No.
I feel like we're going to be doing this show. I mean, and now we are 1 degree Celsius above the 1.5 that the IPCC has said. Hey, you guys remember Florida? Remember when that was water? I feel like it's just gonna slow train into global warming water world as we continue to report on and talk about global warming. I'm becoming a pessimist.
How could that ever happen? I don't know. I kind of feel like there's got to be some kind of that snarky side to you that isn't really pessimistic about the loss of Florida, that actually deep down inside this is optimistic.
Longs for it. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into some other really great news. There's a new cure for cancer.
Oh, you want to go right to yeah?
I want to go right in there. What you got?
This is University of Michigan researchers have used sound to kill cancer in rats. They used focused ultrasound acoustic waves to break down liver tumors, destroying 50 to 75% of the tumor's volume, which apparently was enough for the rat's immune system to clear the rest. They didn't completely destroy these tumors, as the experiment was designed to do. I think they were probably looking for the minimum that they could do to have sort of an effect. But destroying half of the tumor was enough. The method also allowed for targeting of those tissues within a millimeter precision. So it's very rather precise. In more than 80% of the animals, there was no evidence of recurrence or metastasis, which is a fantastic result, but it's actually kind of difficult because it must be nearly impossible to tell if the reoccurrences and the metastasis being when cancer cells kind of break off from the tumor and they go somewhere else in the body and start growing again. It must be very difficult to know if that process has already started before their treatment. So it could actually even be better than the data suggests if you get to it early enough, of course. Quoting Zhen Su, professor of biomedical engineering, and corresponding author of the study, which is published in Cancers. It's a really fun magazine. Quoting, even if we don't target the entire tumor, we can still cause the tumor to regress and also reduce the risk of future metastasis. The treatment stimulated the rat's immune system responses, possibly contributing to the eventual regression of the untargeted portions of the tumor and preventing further spread of the cancer. The technique is currently being used now in a human liver cancer trial in both the United States and Europe. So this is a study on rats, but it looks like they've already got it moved over to the human trials. Yeah. That's pretty wild. So that's
fast moving. It's exciting.
Yeah, this is using microsecond long pulses from a transducer to generate micro bubbles within the targeted tissues. The bubbles then rapidly expand and collapse. These are very violent but extremely localized mechanical stresses that kill the cells of the tumors and then break up its structure, leading to giving the immune system a way in or a fighting chance.
Yeah, that's totally what would happen. As long as the tumor is organized, it's able to use its cellular defenses, I guess the broken cellular defenses, to be able to maintain its structure and its form and protect itself. But as soon as you start breaking it apart, it can't do that as well anymore.
I didn't unfortunately get enough into the details, but one of the things that cancer cells are doing is they're not communicating with the surrounding tissues anymore. So the other tissues are like, hey, you need to do some apoptosis, you need to turn off, you need to stop growing, and the cancer cells just don't pay attention.
Oh, can't hear you.
Exactly, la 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 la. But then all of a sudden, the micro bubbles and things are going, and they're like, oh, help, help, help. And it's like, oh, so you could hear us.
You were just choosing to ignore us.
Okay, yeah, we're going to come help you. Yeah, we'll help you. So, I don't know, but it's pretty amazing. And this targeting with sound is also non-invasive. So this is a high-powered, focused version, basically, of an ultrasound, which is completely, you take images of babies and stuff like that. It's not the same thing that they're using, but it's basically the same idea. So it's non-invasive. You don't have to do a surgery. You don't have to open a body and carve away at stuff. You can target this through skin, and so non-invasive on top of the fact that it looks like it's being pretty darned effective.
Incredibly effective. And because it's targeted sound, you don't have to deal with drug interactions. You don't have to deal with aspects of metabolites or other aspects of the physiology aside from, okay, what tissue are you damaging and what are the recovery processes of that tissue once the tumor has been um, ablated, I guess,
Yeah.
damaged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the alternatives, surgeries, or yeah, you're right. Whole body radiation, like
Yeah.
it's chemotherapy and these treatment. They're pretty extreme, and they have a massive effect on the whole body's health. And so then recovery becomes such a big issue. If you can just target with sound and you go in there and you sit down, they put the little bit of gel stuff on you and put the little thing up there or whatever they do it.
There's
Like
only
a
a little bit
fantastic
of
alternative.
burning.
Sound treatment is so funny because on the scale of pharmaceuticals to crystals, you would think that sound treatment for a disease would be very close to the crystal end of the spectrum, right? It sounds very
No.
like
This is like
woo, but in
police crowd
reality,
control. This is
yes.
this
So
is a big
it sounds
deal.
like it, like, oh, like,
Yeah.
play some good music to your, to your body and you'll heal. And, it sounds very kind of touchy
Yeah.
feely, right? But it's a physical thing. Like
Yeah.
Well,
sound
yeah.
waves are a thing.
They are a thing.
It's a force. So
Yeah.
even though it sounds very kind of silly and ethereal, it's way closer on the other side of the spectrum.
Well, people also actually have though been able to use light therapy to cure things like cataracts or other vision problems. They call it LASIK surgery, but they put a laser in there and they do it. But it's like light, lasers, sound.
It's all very frequency influenced, right? It depends
Mhm.
what the frequency is and what power you're using.
We're just a
So,
bunch of electrons.
amplitude and frequency are
You know.
very important when it comes to things like this. So you're not doing sound baths
And
and stuff.
there's a question there that says won't allow cancer cells to travel. According to this, 80% successful without metastasis after, because that's the thing you would worry about. You break up the tumor and then you've got metastasis going everywhere. It's not quite how metastasis works. It's not just a break off piece that then floats around.
Yeah.
They're like literally sending out away missions.
Right. And so the cells have a very specific function if they're going to go out, seek out a new habitat in your physiological ecosystem, right? So the cells they are those sentry ants, right? The ones that are going out first, checking out what's going on out there. And then those cells can start laying down a new residence in your body. But then with these, what you've done is you've broken it apart. And so the cells aren't ready for being sent out into the unknown. They're not necessarily those seeker ants. They're not they're
they're
not
all
the cells
tough when they're hanging out together.
Yes.
With the immune
Catch 'em
system
on their
gets them
own.
alone and
Mm.
no
That's where the immune system comes in. It's like, gotcha. Eat it. Blair,
Yes.
since you're not going to talk about the talking mushrooms because
No.
we've talked about that before, what are you going
Yeah.
to talk about now?
I do love that story though. I
So good.
have to listen back and enjoy it as a passive listener instead. Because it's such a fun story. Anyway,
2 weeks
I'm
ago.
I'm here to talk about SQuRo, the robotic rat. This is from a team of researchers led by Professor King Shi from Beijing Institute of Technology, China. They have developed a novel robotic rat named SQuRo, small-sized quadrupedic robotic rat. This has been over 10 years in the making. They developed robots that were able to reproduce movement or behavior of rats. Originally, they were wheeled robotic rats that could do rat-like behaviors, but more recently, the wheels have been replaced by legs, more like Mad or Big Dog and other robots that we've seen. But the great thing about this guy is that he's rat-sized, so he's smaller. So if you're thinking about search and rescue and things like that, Big Dog is not going to go into a search and rescue experience and be able to come out, first of all, being able to enter narrow spaces, but also being able to bring out larger payloads. So enter the rat. That's because rats go in and out of narrow spaces and carry heavy things and are very agile in real life. So they had this elongated, slim body. They were able to mimic the motion of actual rats inside narrow spaces, crouching to standing, walking, crawling, turning, and can recover after falling by controlling their limbs and cervical parts to adjust their center of mass. They also pass through an irregular narrow passage, an inner width of 90 millimeters, and that is, 9 centimeters, crossed an obstacle with a height of 30 millimeters, and achieved stable locomotion on a slope with an inclination of 15 degrees. So that all demonstrates their application for inspection tasks inside narrow spaces. Why they had to give them a rat face, I don't know. There's not a real reason for that, other than maybe if they come across somebody who's trapped, it's less terrifying, I suppose.
Yeah, their first one they were gonna do was a rescue snake, but people reacted even worse.
Yes. And so that the other thing that's
why does it have a tail too?
Oh, that's probably for balance, right? To help it with the center of mass. That would make sense.
Oh yeah, probably.
Maybe,
okay.
I don't know, or maybe just for fun. But the really interesting thing about this is that they were able to carry a load equal to 91% of their own weight, which demonstrates superior payload compared to other quadrupedic robots. So our little SQuRo has potentially a bright future. I really need move over Boston Dynamics. I need my music video of SQuRo immediately, please and thank you. Also, don't kick SQuRo, please. That would be
no. Great. I hope no one would kick the little SQuRo. No. And hopefully this will be a friendlier rat to those individuals who are not fans of real rats.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why they made it white also, is so if you made it like dark gray or black in a kind of dark covered up rescue operation, it could look like a real rat and scare somebody, right? But it's bright white. So I feel like they're like, "Oh, that's a rat-shaped robot." Got it.
And it really is. It's got the ears, it's got a pointy nose. It looks like it might have whiskers. I wonder if they would actually add whiskers for sensory aspects at the front of the rat, right? I don't know, but you could have in the head of the rat. I mean, the reason an animal, a rat, a dog, a cat, us, we have a head in a particular shape is for us to be able to survive and sense our environment. The rat goes into little tiny places. The whiskers are able to sense whether or not they can fit in spaces. They can sense sensitive vibrations in the air. Their noses, which stick out in front, are able to scent any chemicals that are odorants that are in the air, and the eyes are up front to let you know what's going on. So I wonder if they're going to put a whole bunch of sensors up there now that they have all of the movement down.
I did the CSI thing. I enhanced, and it does look like on this photo there is a little wire poking out of one side of the snout. So perhaps it is, to kind of judge how wide an opening is before they go in and get stuck. That's perfectly possible.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Oh, SQuRo, what will you do? And what will you be?
Hopefully save lives and a hero, respectively.
You're my SQuRo. Okay. Let's move back to the Earth. We can talk about a little bit of research that is ongoing, looking into our oceans and our ocean currents. Back to this idea of climate change that I touched on at the very top of this segment of stories. A group out of Scripps Institution of Oceanography is working with an international collaboration to computer model simulations to look at the ocean surfaces. And researchers have been doing this, looking at the ocean and how the different currents move in the ocean. We know that there are very regular oscillations. There are gyres that occur around where continents meet oceans. And this week they published in the journal Science Advances their work that they used a bunch of computer simulations to confirm that as the climate warms, the surface of the air close to the ocean is going to the ocean's going to heat up, the air's heating up, and as that heating takes place, there's a lot of evaporation as well. And what is actually happening is that top layer of water on the ocean becomes lighter. It's almost as if because that evaporation is taking place, that it's lifting that little top layer of water. And because that water at the top, that interface between the air and the ocean is lighter, it's starting to move faster. And they're seeing surface currents speed up in more than 3/4 of the world's oceans as they simulated heating the oceans more and more and more. And so
that's really interesting, because isn't that, well, I guess maybe it's a different dynamic that's doing the Atlantic conveyor belt.
Right. So this isn't necessarily affecting the deeper currents yet, so upwelling and stuff like the Atlantic conveyor belt, but it could, because you have the Atlantic conveyor belt that dives way down deep into the colder water and then comes up to the top, and that it moves across the surface at the hotter side and then dives down deep again. And so because the top part of that current is going faster, it could change the way that convection current takes place. More so, what they're thinking about is what the implications are for removing carbon from the oceans, heating the atmosphere, and the ongoing protection by the ocean from overall global warming as it takes up carbon dioxide. What they say is our study points to a way forward for investigating ocean circulation change and evaluating the uncertainty. And so there's a lot of uncertainty in how the oceans play a role in removing carbon, in how the changing speed of gyres in the surface of the ocean, where there's speeding up underneath, slowing down underneath, speeding up on top, slowing down underneath. I mean, that this could really be affecting greenhouse gas levels over time. And they don't really know exactly what the inputs are and how it all balances. And so now it gives them something to add to the climate models to make the climate models a bit more accurate. And one interesting thing that they did see, so the models that they're looking at and the way that the different oceans work, and like I said, you have all of the continents, the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. There are these gyres that are, or I guess you could also say gyres, that are in play between different mixing areas of the surface of the ocean. The only place that these don't take place is around Antarctica. And since Antarctica is at the very southern pole, the Southern Ocean goes around Antarctica. And so you have these westerly winds that just go around and around and around Antarctica. And their models do have those speeding up. And indeed, last year, Scripps scientists detected from space the Antarctic circumpolar current is speeding up. So now they have models which are in line with observations. And so this is all part and parcel with a warming climate. Speeding currents, zipping along the surface of the ocean. It'll change the way that rain is distributed and that air is pushed because the air and the ocean come together.
And so there will be more extreme weather events, which already were going to increase because of climate change. And so now this will make them increase even more.
Yeah.
And eventually, the end of Florida. So it's not all bad.
Oh, boy.
Unless you own property in Florida.
Well, less landmass is a problem no matter what, because there's a lot of humans.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they'd have to
Yeah,
go
they have
somewhere.
to go somewhere.
Ah, yeah, we need to
Yeah.
reverse this thing quick.
Yeah.
I kind of like the fact that they're all the way down in Florida.
Yeah. Plus, where will
River,
all the
run
alligators live
to
is
the
my whole
sea.
question. Because they're
Montana.
freshwater critters, is the thing.
Montana. They'll just move
Ha.
back.
All right. Tell me, though, there's some good news out there, isn't there?
Oh,
Energetically, we can do things better.
yeah, this is just a good news story. Cybernetic implants. Not everyone has them yet, but some people already do. And many more will in the years to come. Typically, we think of cybernetic implants as sort of being medical technology, but pacemakers, that sort of thing. But we could be getting into the realm of people, with all the connectivity and digitalization and devicing, shrinkaging. People might just get tired of losing phones or carrying stuff around and just start implanting things. Some people have already started doing this. So the number of people using implanted electronic devices is only going to get bigger. Currently, batteries of body implanted devices, they need to get replaced occasionally. And how do you do that? Surgery. You have to cut open and go to the device and take it out and change its battery or plug it in and put it back in, however you're going to do it. It requires surgery to take a thing out, put it back in. And most people don't like having surgery done. There's other health complications that are potential infections and that sort of thing. So why not make them just charge wirelessly? We have so electromagnetic induction. That's what we typically think of when we think about wireless charging. That's the thing that smartphones can do. Some smartphones can do. Wireless earphone devices are doing this already.
You get a mattress pad that's a charging, right? You just lay down to sleep. You charge everything.
Oh, that's a different
all
thing.
At once.
It's a different way.
Oh.
So the usage of that is going to be limited, though, because waves from electromagnetic induction don't pass through water or metal. So you have a short charging distance to begin with, and humans are mostly water. And if the device is made out of metal, the battery inside is not going to be able to charge. Also, the heat that's generated while charging is enough to damage tissues. On an electronic device, when you're charging it, that heat normally just sort of dissipates into the air. It's not a big deal. You probably don't even notice if you pick up even a phone that's been charging for a while that there's any heat. But tucked into the body where that heat has nowhere to escape, it builds up and damages tissues. So there's no way to do it until a new wireless charging technique by the Korean Institute of Science and Technology, KIST. They've discovered a way they can use sound to charge implant batteries without having to replace them. Research was led by Dr. Hyun Chul Sung at the Electronic Materials Research Center. It's an ultrasonic wireless power transmission technology. So they adopted this ultrasonic waves energy transmission thing, converts ultrasonic waves into electrical energy using the triboelectric principle that allows for the conversion of small mechanical vibrations into electrical energy effectively. And they use a crystal.
That's cool. I mean, that's a really, really very cool application of the triboelectric effect from crystals.
Yeah, so you've got the video
Really
up. So this
interesting.
is 200 individual little LED diodes. And it's going to power them with sound. And then, so they did that. And then they also, and then the other video that's up there, they used it, they charged through a chunk of pork. There it is.
Uh-huh.
They got it up on one side,
This
down
to
on
the
the other.
experimenting, I just...
But look, you can see the power is making through that big chunk of pork because...
And it did not cook the pork. That is the crucial point.
Didn't cook it and was able to... And so Yeah, so basically their systems looks like it's working. Dr. Song explains the study demonstrated that electronic devices can be driven by wireless power charging via ultrasonic waves. If the stability and efficiency of the device are further improved in the future, this technology can be applied to supply power wirelessly to implantable sensors in deep sea sensors, in which replacing batteries is cumbersome. So apparently we have under the oceans
Right.
cables that do all of the global communication connectivity stuff. And there's sensors down there that monitor, I guess, the health of the cable or
hmm
the things are working. And every once in a while, some poor sap has to swim down to the bottom of the ocean. I don't know. Just take a submarine, have some sort of, I don't know how they do it. They go down and have to change batteries on one of these things. This is ridiculous. They forgot to put, they forgot to thread a power line down, because wouldn't that be all it took? They forgot to do that apparently, so they've got batteries.
Well,
that
if what
actually
you're
need to get-
doing is you're using a sensor to detect whether or not there's corrosion of a line that would influence the ability of that line to allow communication or electricity transfer, then you don't really want another line that could be corroded in the process. So you probably have a whole packaged system.
I guess you're right.
Yeah, but still, yeah,
But this could-
interesting.
but
There are
this would
probably all
work.
sorts of uses underwater for chargers, a way
Yeah,
to
but this-
charge things up, right?
Yeah, this sounds like
I
it would
mean, I
work
got to
underwater.
charge my cell phone when I'm diving.
Yeah.
Got to take those
And
cute underwater
that one,
pictures.
without the example that they offered, I don't think I would have imagined any time reason to need to charge something underwater. Like I
Well, you
would
need
not
to
have been
charge
able.
your solar sub when you're too far down for the sun to when you're in the aphotic zone, then you need to charge it.
But charging it with what? Like if you have a thing that's charged with a battery, you just would have. Why would you? That's like a whole extra step. Just have that much more battery available. Like it just didn't make sense. Why that would be. So it has that one industrial purpose, and then all of the implantable.
I'm going to
devices.
imagine there's more industrial purposes than that. There's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that we do underwater or even at the surface of water that could involve the need for wireless battery charging. I'm gonna think that we are a wet planet.
I'm going to trust that scientists know what they're doing here. But it
Or they're just making things up.
No, it sounds.
We need to write that down in the broader impact statement.
It sounds problematic to
Sounds?
have an implanted thing that is going to get charged via the water inside your body that runs on electrical impulses. It scares me.
Well, but I mean, the thing
Blair,
is,
you're
people
scared
already
of
have.
too many things like that. This will be fine.
But people already have like pacemakers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the thing. And then every once in a while,
What
they
do
have
those
to have
run on? What do pacemakers run
a
on?
battery.
And
battery that
you
has
have
to be
do
replaced.
surgery and have it
And
be
with
replaced.
like you have a date that the battery's good till, and sometime well before that date, you need to go in and have surgery.
Wow,
And while they open up your chest and
That's
take
wild.
the device out and change the battery real quick.
And there
Put
are
a new
other
one in.
devices that they actually have the power cable coming out of your head, say for retinal implants or cochlear implants. Sometimes the batteries are actually they're in your skull, or they have cables coming out, and you plug a battery into it. So it makes things a lot simpler
Wow.
to be able to have the power generation
Yeah.
And you could-
internalized. Yeah,
And you could build it into your pillow, right? So when you're charging your body and the mattress, you've got the pillow
charge
there
everything.
charging your
Yeah.
retinal implant.
That's
There you go.
interesting. I love it. Whew. Well, this might be the time for anyone who has a bag of Oreos out there. Now that we're talking about getting charged up.
I'm really glad you brought this story. I almost brought it because I liked it so much. let's talk about Oreos.
Let's talk about Oreos. And Blair, what is it that you do with an Oreo? I mean, how do you eat an Oreo?
Well, I guess I'm a psychopath because I just dunk it and eat it.
What?
But I know the stereotypical thing is you twist it. But see, I want the perfect mixture of cookie and frosting. I want it evenly. I don't want any uneven bites, so I don't do that. But I know people normally twist them, and the filling comes off on one side, and you get just cookie on the other side.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I've never understood that either. That's like going in and like getting Rocky Road ice cream, and then like I'm just gonna take all these nuts out first, whatever's
that's
in
totally what I would do.
there. And I'll eat
Be like,
those
"Oh,
later.
somebody else
and then-
likes the whole thing, and I'm just gonna want the chocolate ice cream. I don't want any other stuff in it, so I'll pick the bits out of it.
Just get chocolate ice cream.
There's a little something for everybody. So this is what this experiment was getting at, Blair and Justin, is this evenness of filling distribution. And why is it that it seems like you twist the cookie and it always comes off on one side? Are there reasons or ways that would make it come off evenly, where you have half of the frosting on either side of the cookie? We don't know exactly how the magic of the Oreos happens, but this team, they from MIT, they went through about 20 boxes of Oreos, including regular, double stuff, and mega stuff levels of filling, and regular, dark chocolate, and golden wafer flavors, to answer the question of whether or not the filling would ever separate evenly. And no, it did not. Why did they do this experiment? How did they do this experiment? The researchers who were involved in this are rheologists. And you may say, what is a rheologist?
What is?
What is rheology? Well, rheology is the study of how non-Newtonian, well, not just non-Newtonian, but how material flows. How non-Newtonian material flows when it's twisted, pressed, or stressed. Does it flow? Does it crack? Does it shatter? Does it stretch? Does it ooze? So engineers need to know these kinds of things for not only developing materials, but all that can be used in various solutions to engineering problems, but also fixing materials that we're currently using. So apparently the study of rheology is used to study concrete. It's one of these things. Anyway.
What? That's not a non-Newtonian fluid.
Sure is.
But I guess before it dries, it is.
There you go.
Wow, I would have just thought it was a normal fluid.
Yeah. Yeah, so they in this wonderful study, they put an Oreo cookie into a rheostat. A rheostat is a device for studying the forces involved when twisting and stressing a fluid material. They glued two sides of an Oreo to either side of the rheostat and then set about twisting the Oreo with different amounts of force. They used pennies to adjust the force to balance it and to adjust the force that was used. They twisted their Oreo cookies and were able to see what happened to the filling inside. And it never splits evenly, ever. Never, ever, 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 ever. It always only comes off on one side of the cookie or the other. They did see that there were certain aspects to where the cookies were in the tray that was in the package that determined whether or not the filling came off on the right side or the left side of the cookie. And this could have something to do with manufacturing. But getting into this connection isn't
But how
just...
do you know which is the left side or the right side of the
based on which side the cookie comes out of the package. This was a science experiment,
Yeah,
Justin.
Yeah.
It's,
You
Yeah.
open the
it's
package in a very particular way, and you know where
Make
things
some
are.
assumptions about the
one
manufacturing process, but okay.
one of
Yes.
my favorite things about the story is
Yeah.
is kind of why they did this study.
That's what I was just going to get to,
Yes,
Blair.
please.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
Right. So this is this is an experiment for helping people understand the science of rheology and why we use it and how these forces work and potentially apply to our everyday lives. The team's study was really an attempt to make rheology accessible to people, and they actually have a 3D printable Oreometer. And this is a device that people can print if they too would like to stress out Oreo cookies.
So what I read about this story was that this was birthed from the early pandemic. And
Yes.
that the researchers were sent home. They were away from their lab, probably
So this is
stress eating
bored
Oreos.
scientists.
They were thinking, what science can we do right now? Away from our labs, away from the studies we were working on. This is how you can do rheology from home with your Oreos and your 3D printed Oreometer.
And the 3D printed Oreometer will allow people to be able to, in classrooms,
Mm-hmm.
be able to approach this Oreo science in a really engaging, a really engaging way that students will be excited about. Eat your cookies, give them a twist, do your experiment. You can make some hypotheses, learn engineering, learn physics. It's all good.
So let me ask this. Is this the first kind of weird left base research we've read that was birthed because of the shutdown? Because the timeline is right? That
It
these
is
things have kind of
exactly
moved through the
right.
data processing, the publishing, all of it, peer review. So maybe we're going to see more and more of these wild studies popping up in our journals that we go through every week because those early pandemic studies are now being released.
I would guess also that the fish robot car might have been one of
That's a fair
those,
one,
but
yeah.
nobody admitted it.
Somebody was sitting at home talking to their fish going, I wish you could walk.
I wish I could take you for a walk, little
Yeah.
goldfish.
That's
And
the only
so they
time I'm
did.
allowed to leave the house is when I walk around the block. You should come with me.
Mhm. Yeah, but I do
man.
hope that we're able to, that there will be more of these kinds of fun experiments. Science is fun.
Yeah.
Science can be serious, but it's also a lot of fun.
Yeah,
And
that's-
scientists find way to do science, which I think is that's the thing about this study that I got really excited about is like, they got sent home away from their lab. They're like, they're sitting there eating their Oreo. They look at it. They go, we can make this work.
Yeah, I suppose if you're a rheologist, was that what it was called?
RHEOLOGY.
The
Rheology.
opportunities abound for twisting, scrunching, squishing, whatever. Like that's those are operations
True.
that really happen to materials around the house all the time.
And we're going to need a lot of that. Let's make sustainable squishables. Sustainable, squeezable squishables. I don't know, twistable things.
Twistable.
Twistable. Very good, Blair. This is This Week in Science. Thank you for joining us for another episode of our science program. We hope to talk every week about science. We can do that with your help and with you and your friends. So please bring a friend to TWIS next week. All right, let's come back to a COVID update.
Boop. Are we still doing that?
Yeah. Beer, 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 beer.
Bark, bark.
Wacka wacka. All right,
Tell
so
me there's good news.
there's some interesting news.
It's been too long.
It has been too long.
I finally
Everybody,
got COVID fatigue just today.
Today?
Yeah. Took me a while. I've really actually, for the most part of the pandemic, I've just really enjoyed exiting society. I was fine with it until today. Today's
and
the
now you're
day.
done.
It's a nice day outside, and I want to go to the zoo. And everything's open here. There's people everywhere. Everything's open, but I'm still being cautious and having fatigue. So I guess it's my own fault for not wanting to get a
Yeah.
novel virus.
Yeah, we don't want to get the novel virus for the main reason that not just can it lead to very severe disease, but usually only in a subset of the people who get infected. But a new study out of UCLA finds that in their study of about 309 people with long COVID, that 30% of people treated for COVID-19 developed post-acute sequelae of COVID-19, or PASC, which is what they are calling long COVID. 30%.
And what? Wait, 30%. They got what? Sorry, I don't understand.
The common symptoms of this PASC, which is post-acute sequelae of COVID-19, we'll just call it long COVID. The COVID persistent symptoms in the 309 people that they saw with long COVID were fatigue and shortness of breath, about 31 and 15% respectively in hospitalized persons, and a loss of sense of smell in outpatients. And this is interesting. I guess my cousin had COVID, lost his sense of smell, didn't get it back for like 9 months, and it's still not all the way back.
Oh my God.
So yeah, loss of sense of smell. It's a big one. But otherwise, it's totally fine, apparently. So there were a bunch of people that they looked at between April in 2020 and February 2021. They saw this 30% of people at UCLA's COVID ambulatory program develop long COVID. This seems in line with other studies that have been looking at outcomes of COVID-19 and the persistence of symptoms. So about not all people, but the people that they did see developing long COVID were people more likely to be hospitalized in the first place. These individuals were people with a history of hospitalization, diabetes, and higher body mass index who were most likely to develop it. Interestingly, those people covered by Medicaid, not commercial private health insurance, were less likely. So people with Medicaid were less likely to get long COVID. People who had undergone an organ transplant were less likely to get long COVID. And ethnicity, older age, and socioeconomic status were not associated with long COVID in the least. So there were some surprises to the study, but it's still a small study, very probably unrepresentative of the general population.
I think one thing it does illustrate, though, beyond a shadow of doubt, is that all senses are not on the same level. Like,
right.
We've known about the loss of sense of smell as being an effect. Nobody really cares. Nobody really
cares until it happens to them.
Yeah, but even then, like, nobody's that scared of that happening to them.
Right.
Like, if people were
not
going
like hearing
blind
or vision
or losing their hearing or just couldn't feel touch anymore or whatever.
Your fingers went numb.
Yeah, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, this is like a horrible like fate. This is from his. You lost your sense of smell." It's fine. Okay.
Unless you're like a chef or you're in perfume, right? Then it's a problem.
You're like one of those super smeller people.
Yeah,
a sommelier. That's not going to work.
Oh yeah, that
very
would be
well.
a bad one.
But that's such yeah.
So long COVID. It's a possibility for a large number of people. We still don't really understand who's going to get it versus who doesn't. Really, what it is a persistence of certain symptoms longer than 90 days. So if you, after 3 months, 2 to 3 months, still have symptoms, then you're really in the long COVID range, or with this post-acute COVID, post-acute sequelae.
Can we take a second to acknowledge that, though? I feel like that's an important piece of information. 90 days of COVID is normal. That's not long COVID.
Right. That's like
So,
it can stick around for a while.
yeah, and I think that's the part people keep forgetting is like, oh, you can get it now. It's not as bad now. You still could be sick for 90 days.
Maybe you're just fatigued a little bit, but
Oh, man.
that's 3 months of just being really tired and feeling less productive and less able to
Sounds
do
terrible.
things. You really want that? I don't know. But people want this
what
to
do you
be
do?
over,
What do you
and at
do
this
if you
point in
already
time,
have that? Wait, what happens?
you have it anyway, and you get it
What if
worse.
you're already kind of listless,
Right.
and then you get and then then when you can just not get out of bed at all? Is that what
Yeah.
happens? You get
Possibly.
or are you like
Yeah,
immune to it?
yeah.
Like, I'm already very lazy, and don't
And so
exercise.
there are multiple viruses, that are these, not, lots of viruses that are out in the world to be worried about. Some of them are more transmissible than others. Newer variants of COVID are even more transmissible, and are getting into the wonderful Omicron subvariants. BA2 has a new sublineage that's taken over very quickly. The CDC is still suggesting that people wear their masks in public transit, but for the time being, in the United States, a judge from Florida has nullified the federal mask mandate for public transit. So no longer do you have to wear a mask in public transit, although some outlets are still mandating it. Certain airlines, certain public transportation outlets are still asking that people wear. So it's very scattershot at this point in time and very confusing to people. It's unfortunate, and the Biden administration may be going in to see about
Executive ordering or something.
yeah, well, not executive ordering, but just getting the judgment overturned. So they're gonna see about going back in to fix that, because they're in an interview on NPR, a public health lawyer this morning stated that this has bigger implications for future pandemics and future issues where you have interstate travel between states that the states can't cover. And if this judgment is allowed to stand, it potentially will keep the federal government from being able to fill in those gaps that the states can't fill in for public health. So
it's also dangerous, though, because if they escalate it and it goes the wrong way, then you create a precedence for future pandemics.
Right.
So I think that was the reason that there was a hesitation and some planning happening before immediately filing an appeal.
Exactly. So the appeal may happen. It's very likely to happen. But they need to really get their ducks in a row to make it right. And in the meantime, the CDC is sitting back going, well, we recommend you wear a mask in public places. But there's no teeth anymore.
Yeah, and that's a big problem, because this is a health issue, not a legal issue, and not a political issue. And this is a person who was a politically appointed judge who hadn't been a judge.
Yeah,
who's been before. They got it was like they hadn't even tried a case in court before. Like, they have literally no experience for the job, and they're getting to make a huge public health policy change.
Well, she's been a judge for a while at this point. She's been a judge for a while. And she was a judge. She just hadn't tried things in a particular way before getting the appointment. But the what is it? The American Lawyers Association, the American Bar Association. She's one of the few judges that they like actively wrote a letter
highly unqualified.
saying she was highly unqualified. Yeah. Not
But
recommending
again,
her
as
for her
somebody in
appointment.
the chat room points out, in future, Florida won't exist, so we won't. That will include all of the
So, yeah,
appointed.
it's Earth Day. Bringing us right back around to Earth Day. So we have to track COVID, these wonderful systems in our wastewater at this point. There's a huge system that across collaboration across the country where we are now monitoring wastewater for viral particles of COVID. It's giving us a heads up as to COVID levels around the country. This is potentially one reason why testing has been on the decline so much. However, a new study out of Stanford University has just found that some patients can shed fragments of the virus from their feces for up to 7 months past their initial infection. This potentially, they think, plays a role in long COVID symptoms in their group of study subjects. They had 4% of their study subjects did have long COVID and were still showing viral RNA 7 months after they had been infected. They found traces of SARS-CoV-2 viral RNA in the feces of just under 50% of their study cohort within a week of the initial diagnosis. 4 months later, 12.7% of the patients were still shedding. These are not infectious particles, they say. These are just viral fragments, but it is indicative of a persistent infection within the gut, and that SARS-CoV-2 is hiding out in the digestive systems of some individuals. We don't know why, but this does add a question to how we're surveilling our wastewater systems, because if you do have a certain percentage of the population that have these ongoing persistent gut infections, how does that affect your measurements? And so we just need to put that into the math and make sure it's in there accurately.
Well, before that, at least it's a better safe than sorry scenario. So, worst case scenario, we're overestimating how much COVID is in a population, not under, which would be bad.
Right.
So.
Yeah. It's probably better to overestimate, but you don't want to be misestimating for this at all.
Right.
And so, how do we track whether or not people still have long COVID, when they're infected with something, when they're not infected with something? What about like all these symptoms that people talk about when they get their vaccine? Like, oh, what if there was some way to really easily track all this stuff? Oh my God, people wear smart devices. 2 studies out this week, one out of the University of Michigan, examined the effects of COVID-19 with 6 factors derived from heart rate data. They followed University of Michigan students and medical interns across the country, and they discovered signals embedded in the heart rate indicating when individuals were infected with COVID and how sick they became. They found that people with COVID had an increase in their heart rate per step after symptom onset, and those with a cough had a higher heart rate per step than those without a cough. They also found other symptoms, the circadian phase, uncertainty, the body's inability to time daily events increased around COVID symptom onset. Daily basal heart rate tended to increase on or before symptom onset. And researchers think this might have been because of fever or maybe anxiety. I might be infected. Oh my gosh. Heart rate tended to be more correlated around symptom onset, which could indicate the effects of stress-related hormones like adenosine. So, interestingly, this could potentially lead to future studies or future use of heart data to understand infection in not just COVID, but in other illnesses like the flu. And just if people monitor certain factors of their heart rate, it could give people an indication that maybe they're infected with something before they would know otherwise. And additionally, another study out of La Jolla, Scripps Research, they just published in NPJ Digital Magazine their their censored data on sleep activity and heart rate from 5,600 individuals that were involved in the digital engagement and tracking for early control and treatment study that was launched in March 2020. And this study was looking at wearables to try and to see how vaccination affected physiology. And they showed that average resting heart rate of study participants increased significantly the day following vaccination, peaking 2 days post-vaccination and returning to normal 4 days after the first dose and 6 days after the second. In addition to increases in resting heart rate after being higher after the second dose of Moderna versus the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, the study suggests that prior COVID-19 infection was linked with a significantly higher resting heart rate increase after the first vaccine dose relative to those without prior infection. Women experienced greater changes in heart rate than men in the 5 days following vaccination. Individuals under the age of 40 had higher changes in resting heart rate than older adults only after the second dose. And they didn't really see activity and sleep patterns change very much. But this gives data where we haven't really had data before. They looked at 2 weeks prior to vaccination and 2 weeks after vaccination to be able to actually see that there were changes in physiology due to vaccination, which is, people talk about, oh, I didn't feel good. I had a fever. I had this, I had that. But now this is something that can actually be physically tracked without any kind of biased subjective reporting from a person. Your body does the reporting for you.
Well, I have to say, thanks to these stories, I am over my COVID fatigue, and I'm back on high alert and ready to not go out and do anything again.
Yes.
Thank
Get your
you.
wearable. Get your little smartwatch, whatever, fitness band. Get you there. This is This Week in Science. Thank you for joining us for another episode. If you are enjoying the show, please head over to TWIS.org and click on the Patreon link. Patreon is how we support the show. Listeners like you can donate monthly from $1 to $1,000 a month. If you choose to support us at $10 or more per month, we will thank you by name at the end of the show. We really can't do this without you. Thank you for your support. All right, let's come back to a wonderful part of the show. It's gonna make us go cuckoo, 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 cuckoo. Wait, Rhino? Heck if Rhino. It's time for Blair's Animal Corner.
With Blair.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. There's Animal Corner.
What you got, Blair?
I have cuckoos in honor of International Cuckoo Day, but
Woo!
it's not good news for the cuckoos, actually.
Uh-oh.
So cuckoos, what are they famous for?
Egg. They put the egg in the other nest and then take
Yes.
off and let somebody
Yes,
else.
I think what you're saying is brood parasitism, and you know what? You'd be exactly right.
Yep.
So cuckoos smuggle their eggs into foreign nests, and then they hatch early, which allows them to grow quicker and beg more loudly for food. And then the host birds feed the cuckoo and starve their own children to death.
Such a happy
Yeah.
story.
That's what cuckoos do, and that's how they survive. And they have been doing this for 2 million years. And the way that they get away with it is they mimic the color of the host parent's eggs. The study that I wanted to report on tonight is all about the color of those eggs and how evolution might actually be fighting back against these cuckoos, because if this was a super effective strategy, this is my own editorializing, is if this was super effective, there would be so many cuckoos and so much less of other birds. But it's effective enough that cuckoos survive, but host species still are able to maintain. So what is going on here? There's definitely an evolutionary arms race happening. As these cuckoos get better at forging their egg colors, there has to be evolutionary pressure to work around that trick. And so this study was looking at the color of eggs and how cuckoos inherit the color that they would use on their eggs. This is a study that this week proved for the first time that the skill, quote unquote, inherited that dictates cuckoo egg color is inherited via the W chromosome, which in birds is akin to the Y chromosome. The W chromosome indicates females, however, but it is the single chromosome. The double chromosome, like XS for us, is the male, and so the W indicates a female bird. So that means that the skill that allows them to hatch their eggs a specific color to be able to hide the baby in plain sight is passed through the mother, and the father has no impact on that. It's like color blindness, actually, in humans. It's sex-linked onto that one chromosome. So, studying the DNA samples of 196 cuckoos from 141 nests in Zambia, they found this very specific linkage to the W chromosome. And then they wanted to look at their ability to adjust that. So it turns out that they not only get it from their mother, but that they only know how to mimic, quote unquote, know how to mimic the color of eggs that they were laid in. So whatever they grew up in, that's the type of egg that they will hatch later in life. So it's imprinted.
Wait,
yes.
Hang on. Let me just. Can I pause it for a minute? Because I'm really struggling to.
Yes.
So they say they go into they get into a nest full of blue eggs, and they're a blue egg, and then they're gonna have their own blue egg one day.
Correct.
Now that sort of makes sense but that's only if they keep going to blue egg nests. They can't go to the yellow egg nest because then the game's over and a whole evolution.
Yes.
What?
Yes. However, the genetic piece is that they can only go to blue egged nests because that's genetically the type of eggs that they can make. The pattern and the specific look of the egg is imprinted based on the nest that they were born in.
What?
So, yes. So they have their crayons. They're only given the blue crayons, basically. And then the pattern that they pick is based on what they saw growing up. So, what? Yes. So it's very 2 million years. This is a lot of evolution that has got the cuckoo here.
But the implications are insane.
Yeah. So there are blue eggs, there are red eggs. Those are both found on these female chromosomes, but never together. And this is one of those situations where colors in inherited traits are often things that are combined from multiple chromosomes, and you kind of get a blend. Like hair color, eye color, these can be things. Your skin color actually is probably the best example of that, is that you end up being kind of a blend of your two parents because there's multiple locations on multiple chromosomes that dictate that. So it's kind of a mixture of all these different indicators. That's how the colors of eggs work, but because it is only found on the W chromosome, the red and the blue can never be mixed. You can never get this kind of in-between color that is green. And so there are certain birds that have figured out that they can lay olive green eggs. This is the tawny flanked prinia that cannot be duped by a cuckoo. Because cuckoos cannot make green eggs.
Aha.
Yes. So this is kind of a extremely convoluted story based on many previous pieces of research over many, many years that have figured out these bits and pieces of how cuckoos work bit by bit. And now we are at this place where we understand how they can make their colors and what their limitations are in their eggs. What that means is there are certain colors of eggs that cuckoos cannot infect the nest of. And so there are safeguards against cuckoos. The question is, how many quote-unquote unforgeable egg signatures will start to evolve, and how many of these will force cuckoos to change either the host that they use, the way that they fool them, or the way that they raise their babies? How will evolution push these guys in the future?
I think this is a fascinating question because it's been millions of years already
Yes.
to this point. So it's obviously a very difficult
Yeah.
back and forth, a very difficult process of adaptation.
And, you
for
know,
both
there's lots
species.
of birds in the tree, you could say. So they
Yeah.
probably could switch to other species without too much trouble. Maybe.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, but I'm still they can make the pattern on the egg from the one. So that does that mean? Because without going into a visual to genetic memory to knowing how to like the intuitive body designing an egg to mimic, I don't see it's not possible. But could it be like there's like a direct diet thing? Because they're eating the diet early on of whatever they're being fed by the mama bird in that nest.
Mm-hmm.
Could
It's
that
hard for me to
That
believe
would
the
make more
diet would
sense.
be
yeah, wouldn't it? Like,
variable
I'm like,
enough.
even that pathway is like, okay. So how does that work? But like, because then you're talking about something that's imprinted by their diet that then affects all of the eggs, which I guess is how that works.
I think it's
know how it
more
works.
likely that there are genetic markers, many genetic markers on these host birds' DNA that tell them how their eggs are going to pop out. And that over time, cuckoos have kind of pigeonholed themselves into specific species in specific locations of specific species, and that their repertoire is not that large.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. It's a very good question. I think a lot more research needs to be done to figure out what level this imprinting is, what level the genetic coding is, and how it all works in concert, and how much you could take could I take a cuckoo from 500 miles away, stick it in a host bird nest, and have it reproduce the same eggs? That's the question, right? Because there's so much going on with cuckoos.
I need a cuckoo twin
How does it
study
work?
now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's going to be hard because, you know, there's usually only ever one in the...
Yeah. We're gonna have to do some cloning.
Mhm.
It'll be fine. This is project well worth pursuing.
Yeah.
That's mind blowing.
Speaking of cloning, actually, that's a very good segue into my next story. Because black rhinos may soon be saved by cloning. We know about that. But before we can save them, we have to stop them from going extinct right now. And so that's more what this study is about. This is from University of Manchester, working in collaboration with Kenyan conservationists and scientists. They wanted to look at data from the critically endangered Kenyan black rhino populations to see how the impacts of individuals change the expectations for the viability of populations. That's a lot of words to say. They wanted to know if it mattered which rhino gets poached. So what they found was that poaching combined with individual rhino reproductive variants, or as they call it elsewhere, reproductive skew, which I like that term a lot, reproductive skew, or how successful the mother rhinos are at raising young, leads to a greater than first thought risk to the survival of the black rhino. What they found is that reproductive variants increased extinction risk by as much as 70% when they combined it with poaching. That's because indiscriminate killing, if you're just killing whatever rhino, means it's possible you could kill a very important rhino. There are some rhinos that are very good at having babies, do from an early age, and contribute a lot to their population. There are others that start later, get pregnant less often, die sooner, any number of things. And so individual rhinos have different impacts on population viability. They have not included reproductive skew. I know, black rhinos are so cute with their little lip. Black rhinos have not been included in predictions of future population growth for many endangered species because it requires detailed individual breeding histories, constant monitoring, all sorts of things like that. The thing about black rhinos is they are constantly being monitored by humans, by drones, just constantly. Because if they weren't, they'd all be gone, unfortunately. It sucks. I hate it. But ultimately, if somebody was not there watching all black rhinos at all times, they'd already all be poached. So to be able to monitor rhinos already means they're a perfect kind of case study for looking at reproductive skew, labeling specific individuals, and protecting specific individuals more than others. So if you have limited resources to protect rhinos, you can identify specific subpopulations, specific family groups, specific individuals that need the bodyguards most. And so this could have a pretty big impact on other endangered species management, because differences between individuals and their contribution to populations is most likely an issue across many species. And so, if possible, you should be evaluating this when assessing the risk of extinction for individual species. Of course, there are some species that are longer lived than others, more easy to differentiate, all this kind of stuff. But you could even see how for short-lived animals that live in large populations, you could identify subpopulations or family lines that are most influential on a population and population growth. And from there, you can also make better decisions for who to protect and how.
Protect all of them. Rhinos are my favorite
obviously.
endangered animal of all time. And, they're like one of those megafauna that if you were looking at this and like, in the fossil record, there was this giant friendly creature that had giant horns on its nose. You go, oh wow, that's a weird thing that couldn't live in the modern age. That thing's too big and weird. And they're here
They're
still,
so cool.
and they're the sweetest. They're snugglers. Go watch them, like they play together, they snuggle together. They're big puppies with horns.
But I
on
mean,
them.
ideally, it's not just because they're cute and they're sweet. Ideally, it's because they are important parts of their ecosystem,
certainly
and
are.
all animals deserve the opportunity to live and
course.
not be hunted just for a horn or,
Yeah.
A horn
But-
that is chemically exactly the same as your fingernails and your hair. It's just keratin.
Yeah.
So it's and Justin, you're right. We should protect them all. But they're still getting poached somehow.
Yes.
So it's not effective. So, and that's the problem, is you can't put fences around wild animals and have them still have the same impact on their ecosystem they did before. And if you can't put fences around them, like think about elephants. They can walk thousands of miles over a matter of days, and they completely change the ecosystem as they walk through it. So you can't kind of create a perimeter and secure it. That's not something you can do. So you have to be realistic that, again, we share our planet with lots of different people, with lots of different resource needs and values and abilities and pressures, and in the end you have to find a way to work around what we currently have. I would love to create a world where endangered species are free and won't be trafficked, and there's a million pangolins on every tree, and
Create a
I'd love
world
it.
where there are no endangered species,
Yeah.
where everything is living in harmony,
Yeah, the only endangered species are
sustainably.
endangered because there's too much selective pressure and they're an evolutionary dead end.
Yeah. Ah,
Hmm.
exactly. Dead
But
end.
anyway, on this Earth Day, think about rhinos. Don't buy any poached animal products. Ask what things are made of when you buy things when you're traveling or you're buying things from an antique shop.
Don't buy
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, or do some research on population dynamics and help save them in the future.
Yes. Thank you, Blair.
Yeah.
Justin, what do you have for us?
I've got a 500 million year old camera lens.
Sweet.
Yeah. Or rather, a 500 million year old trilobites vision that has been recreated in a camera. So, trilobites had compound eyes, which is a single big eye that's made of tens of thousands of tiny independent cornea lenses. Got little light sensitive cells in there in this one giant eye. Now, there's one group though, the Dalmanita Socialis had something very unique. They had two eyes two of these compound eyes. Each one was mounted on a stalk and composed of one lens on each that bent light in very different angles than each other. So one of their stalks was set to see things super close. So something they wanted to eat flies right in front of their face, they can get it. And the other eye was designed to look really far away, as far as a kilometer away. So that if something was going around looking for trilobites to eat, it could see it and stay out of its way. So researchers looked at this interesting configuration on this 500 million year old fossilized creature and decided, what would it look like with that binocular vision, with the one really close up and the one super far away? So National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST folks, developed a miniature camera featuring a bifocal lens based on this creature. They got record-setting depth of field in a single photo. So that's some of the data photos. There's one that I got linked in the show notes that'll actually show the ruler close up and then the building off in the distance. Their depth of field on this, depth of field is one of those things that we kind of start to take for granted now. But Citizen Kane was the first movie where they had the foreground and the background over, a few meters or whatever. That was in focus. Before then, he sort of had one plane of focus, and that's still how actually I think a lot of filming is done. The cameras can simultaneously image objects as close as 3 centimeters and as far away as 1.7 kilometers, keeping everything in between in focus. Now, the intermediate distances, though, between this near and far focal lengths, were handled by a computer algorithm that mimics the human's nervous system, sharpening objects to create the final all-in-focus image that covers the entire depth of field. Pretty interesting way that they went about doing it with the lenses that they had to create, these teeny tiny lenses, as well as a computer processing to combine all of these images. There we go. That's the one. And it's the picture in the upper right-hand side there, where you can see those are actual objects in the foreground. And those are some of the university buildings off in the far distance. And to get everything in that much focus in a single shot is absolutely insane.
So are they used human neural networks to be able to train their computer algorithm? Are they assuming that the trilobites had a similar neural network to the human nervous system.
Yeah, so
I
it's
mean, that's like, yes, okay, you've got this big system, but are they saying that these ancient trilobites could actually see with this accuracy, with this acuity?
I don't know that they are, but it is stands to reason when they're saying human neural network. It's it's computer algorithmy stuff. It's
Yeah,
the idea is this is processing that takes place in the brain when handling visual information as it is something analogous to it anyway. So
right.
yeah, it's possible that they could have this depth of vision. I mean, when you've got binocular eyes, the first thing that you're going to try to do is
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 look.
track things, track
Yeah.
motion, track movement, that sort of thing.
If they could see so well, why didn't they see their own extinction coming? Oh,
Go whack,
Do you
go
know
whack,
how
yeah.
long they were on the planet? Mm,
Longer than
and
us.
where are we at? How close to the 1.5
yeah.
degrees Celsius?
Fair.
But they've actually, but this camera is being able to also do some really crazy high resolution stuff going forward. They're going to be able to use it for all sorts of interesting applications and imaging and processing and things going forward. Next, researchers in India, like I said before, finally found a good use for turmeric. And actually, the extract curcumin is the missing ingredient to building safer, more efficient fuel cells. So what they did is they mixed curcumin with gold nanoparticles to create an electrode that requires 100 times less energy to efficiently convert alcohol into electricity. So most fuel cells, when you think of fuel cell, people are thinking hydrogen. But there's a lot of interest right now in creating the ethanol fuel cell. Proving that because it's just easier. Ethanol is much easier to acquire. There's hydrogen is the most common chemical element in the universe, and so you would think, let's use the most common chemical element in the universe to turn into a fuel source. But the problem is collecting hydrogen, getting it all in one place, because it's very tricky. It floats around. The particles are very small. They don't glom together very well. It occurs naturally on Earth, only in compound form with other elements. Water, there's hydrogen there, but it's actually takes a lot of energy to split water and hydrogen and oxygen to use it then later as a fuel and harvest from that. It's energy energy heavy. We can get it rather easily comparatively in extracting it from natural gas and fossil fuels. But again, this, if you're trying to get the green economy, and that's why you're moving towards hydrogen, it might not be that good. So extraction adds to the hydrogen's fuel cells cost, environmental packs, plus it's also compressed gas. So that's another whole challenge of storage and transportation. Ethanol, we can basically transport and move around the same way that we do gasoline today. So there's already a ton of infrastructure. We've got that whole corn into ethanol as a fuel to some degree that's been worked on. So this is a pretty big area of research, which I was, until reading the story, had no idea that we were looking at doing ethanol fuel cells. But yeah, these researchers, they found that this substance, the curcumin, worked perfectly. Part of the problem that they had was they have to mix things in to coat the gold nanoparticles so they don't glom all together. This prevented that from happening in the most productive way out of anything that they've tried so far.
So let me get this straight.
Cool.
So they're worried about finding hydrogen and gathering it together and all this kind of stuff because it's too hard. So instead, they're gonna focus on gold and spices. Spices, which to my knowledge are very expensive, usually only available in small quantities. An example of kind of like the ultimate form of elitist status
Right.
and like, the most valuable stuff on the planet, spices, in a lot of, the
Right.
history of human trade.
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. No, even still, go to the store and try to buy some saffron. It's $20 for like this much.
So but it's a great point you bring up, because they're using gold nanoparticles also, right? But in the hydrogen fuel cell, it's been platinum.
Right, which is even more of a rare
Even more
metal.
expensive,
Well,
than that,
Yeah.
right? So, and the spice, curcumin or turmeric. I don't know how much of that we're really growing. I think India probably goes through a bit as a nation. I feel
So,
like somebody's mother was suggesting this.
but this is something that
Too, in
is
one of the research
potentially
papers.
part of a sustainable solution, as long as we're not
Yes.
destroying our topsoil, right? We can grow the turmeric as long as we've got water. We can and sunlight. We can grow turmeric, uh, and the ethanol itself is coming from the waste products from corn. Ethanol is a massive subsidy energy product. Um, when we're not growing corn for cows, it's corn for ethanol. So I have issues with ethanol as a fuel source in the first place. There are lots of issues with this, but it is a step in the direction away from fossil fuels and toward this new direction. This will make it more efficient and possibly more sustainable.
Yeah, and if you're
And just
using it
finding
as a
more.
chemical reaction without burning it,
Yeah.
that's and they did have like you were saying, they did put the constraints on designing this to try to make all the materials as green and
As
renewable
possible.
as possible. Is
Yeah.
part of what they were also attempting to do here. There's other ways
Don't
that
make
you
the
can.
problem worse.
Well, yeah, there's other ways. There's other more toxic ways of doing things that are available.
Yeah.
But if it's defeating the purpose,
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. This is This Week in Science. I have a couple last stories here. Liar, liar, drama
Hey.
bird.
Ooh.
Liar, liar, drama bird. Last year, I talked about splendid lyrebirds.
Ooh.
Splendid lyrebirds lie to their potential mates with their song. They set up their song and they're like, I'm going to make songs pretending that I am really popular and already having sex. And so, like, we already know that lyrebirds are, their songs are interesting. One aspect of them, though, is that they are mimics. They're vocal mimics. They don't really have their own songs. They take all of their song elements from things in their environments, other birds, car alarms, you name it. They pick and choose to create a very dynamic, interesting song.
And I don't know if the kids today really understand how insanely well they do this, because there was a time
They're like the hip hop samplers. The lyrebirds. They're the sample magicians.
There was a time when people were installing these cheap car alarms that would, like, a truck would go by and the thing would go off, and it went through this, almost like this pattern of different sounds that would run through. And then every once in a while, you'd hear a bird that was making the car alarm sound. And I haven't heard one of those car alarms in decades, so I think the birds have probably stopped. But it was just so amazing to me at the time that the birds in my neighborhood, even when the car alarms weren't going off, were making it like it was a bird song. They had like
bird
you said,
mimics.
sampled it.
The bird mimics of the bird worlds. They can make all sorts of sounds sound just right. Well, this bird is not a splendid lyrebird. This is an Albert's lyrebird, also from Australia, that I would like to talk about tonight, where this research out of Western Sydney University has discovered that the males of this species don't only create long, complex sounds that have been sampled from their environment, they also are drama queens. These Albert's lyrebirds create their songs in such a way they don't just put all the sampled material together haphazardly, randomly, just like, oh, I learned a new thing, let's put that in there now. Oh, here's another sound, I'll throw that one in there now. Oh no, these mimics, they have a characteristic song sequence. Different populations of these Albert's lyrebirds have characteristic song sequences where males sing the same song sequence many times during the breeding season with only very minor variations. Neighbors sing a similar sequence, but there are differences. And within the sequences, they found that the similarity between the sequences an individual male sings is 40.7%. This is a figure significantly higher than expected by random chance. And the average similarity among sequences from different males from the same population is 35.6%, and different populations, it's even lower at 19.3%. So you've got the same population, very similar, same individual, very similar, different population, very different. So what they're showing with this data is that individuals copy their sequences from other individuals nearby. It's like, oh, I like the song you're singing. That's a great song. Wah, 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 wah. Oh, I love that beat. Let's drop that. Wah, 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 wah. But maybe not. I don't know. I don't hang out with lyres
So
all the
the
time.
samplers are sampling from other birds, but then they start sampling from each other.
The samplers are sampling from the samplers. Yes.
And so these
And
are, yeah.
And in the way that they're putting it together, they're maximizing drama. So they put their sequences together so that the most discordant samples are next to each other, so that there's a lot of difference
Wow.
between the segments that have been sampled, so that it's constantly changing and creating a lot of dynamics and drama throughout their song.
Punching it up in the studio.
That's right.
I was hoping.
Can you hear it okay?
That's the one I've heard.
Wasn't that interesting?
That's like a whole forest of birds right there.
Uh-huh. And it's just one bird. I love that one.
That sounds like they took that from another species for sure.
Kiki, in the after show, you've got to find me a mockingbird doing a car alarm.
That's a kookaburra.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. So you've got some very interesting sounds in these sequences. But the idea is that these birds are trying to give this dynamic impression of virtuosity to the listener.
Right. That's what I was going to ask, because I feel like they don't want to sound like other birds. That's not beneficial to them. So they're just showing off. They're just saying, look, I can do all these different calls.
I can do all these
They're doing
calls.
impressions for her.
Yep. And they're stealing them from other males, going, look, I can do this one too, and better than that guy, and putting them contrasting with like quiet sounds and loud sounds, low sounds and high sounds, buzzes, trills, just trying to create this. The researchers say it's kind of a game of telephone, but then the individuals are putting their repertoire together to enhance the drama.
And to add to the drama, they're going to do that whole thing while their tail feathers are extended up over their head.
Indeed.
For whatever reason.
Indeed.
Look, I have giant tail feathers for no reason, and also I sound like other birds.
Mimicry is the best form of it's giving a compliment, right?
Flattery?
Yeah.
Flattery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mimicry is the best flattery. Yes. Well, obviously, I don't have a whole lot of imagination if I'm going to be talking about mimicry as the best thing, right? I'm just going to copy all the other people out there. No, we don't need to copy. Some people, though, do not have great visual imagination. Some people can't imagine how things look in their mind's eye. When you think of a mind's eye, the things that you see in it, some people have very vivid visual imagery they can create in their heads. Other people cannot. I, for instance, have issues with visual imagination and so I'm curious about this particular study, particularly as it is about a disorder. It's not really a disorder, but a particular state called aphantasia. Aphantasia is a lack of visual imagination. It's not that Disney movie with Mickey the Mouse and the magic and stuff.
That's a different Fantasia. For sure.
Different Fantasia, yeah. So in this study, researchers exposed people to bright shapes and dark shapes and looked to see how their pupils dilated or didn't dilate. So when there were bright shapes, pupils contracted. When there were dark shapes, pupils opened up a bit. And then to test visual imagery, they had individuals just imagine those same shapes, the dark shapes or the light shapes, and then measured pupillary constriction to see what happened. And they tracked that people's pupils dilated when they were imagining the dark shapes, just as if they were seeing them, and contracted when they were imagining bright shapes, just as if they were seeing them. However, the amount of dilation or constriction seemed to be in correspondence to the vividness of that imagery that people reported having. Of course, this is subjective because you can't look inside of people's heads and go, how vivid is that image in there? So they wanted to know, okay, well, let's really test this. And they found people with aphantasia, this inability to imagine visual scenes. They repeated it with 18 participants, exposing them to bright and dark shapes. Pupils work. That pupillary reflex works just fine. No problem. Constriction to bright, dilation to dark. Visualize the same shapes. Nothing happened. No pupillary response. This has never been measured before. And so the researchers are now suggesting that these results suggest that we may have a marker that can be measured to determine whether or not people have aphantasia, as opposed to just going on the subjective, oh yeah, I don't imagine things visually very, very well.
So Kiki, you said you're bad at it.
I am, yeah. So like trying to imagine, it's like this vague, like I think I have, like when I try to imagine something specific, it's very hard for me to actually, like, it's not super visual. It's like contextual somehow in my brain in a different way.
So let me ask you this. Yeah. Over the last 2 years, when you've met someone with a mask on and you've never met them before, do you imagine what their face looks like under the mask?
No.
Wow. Okay. So I always do, which is why it's very jarring when they take the mask
see
off.
Them without it. Yeah.
Because it never looks like what I imagined their nose or their mouth looked or their chin looked like. It's very jarring.
Yeah, like I've experienced that.
If they're a person who could grow facial hair, do they have facial hair or not? I imagine something, and it's never what. I imagine a whole face. You don't imagine a face under the mask?
No,
Wow,
I don't. Yeah.
that's
So
very
they went
interesting.
on in with these aphantasic participants and asked them.
Aphantasmic,
These
I think is what
I
you're
know,
fantastic
thinking of.
I
people.
think they're aphantastic. Aphantasic participants, and had them try to visualize the shape, 4 shapes instead of just 1 shape. So, okay, here's the dark shape and the light shape. It's just a shape. Just imagine 4 of them instead of a particular color. And so, since they and what they say is that imagining a larger amount should correspond to greater cognitive effort. And there are studies that suggest that pupillary constriction does go along with cognitive effort. And they did see that there was pupil response in in these aphantasic pupils when they're trying to imagine the larger number of things. And so they say this is the first time they have strong biological evidence that those with aphantasia are really trying to create a mental image. I swear I try. I'm really trying. Putting to rest claims that they may simply not be attempting to create a mental image.
They're just not even
Just
trying.
lazy
I
brain.
am. There's something there. It's just no, I don't think it's the same as what you're thinking of.
It makes
But
me wonder if you're like, have you ever been like in a spelling bee?
yes,
Are you really good at spelling?
I'm good at spelling.
Well,
But I
and,
do lose
and
track sometimes in the middle of the words because I try to think about what the word looks like, but I lose track a lot because
okay,
the word just kind of fuzzes. It just like is it
like
doesn't.
reading
Yeah,
in a dream. So
yeah. But I dream very very vividly.
Hmm.
I'm
interesting.
dreaming. It seems very vivid. I don't know.
Hmm.
Very interesting. But um, what they're hoping is that having this objective measure of a previously subjective state now will be able to look at the brain more specifically related to imagery, aphantasia, hyperphantasia, those people who have extremely strong visual imagery, uh, to be able to understand how the brain works for different people with respect to all these different things. And so this method can help us understand the brain mechanisms behind imagery.
Nice.
Why do some
Cool.
people why can't I picture a green apple?
With the
I don't
little
know.
brownish dots all over it.
Wow. Brown dots. Has it gone bad?
No, it's not. They're not like bad ones. It's just the little. It's like freckles. It's got the little like tan freckles on
There's
the
freckles on
green apple.
green
On my
apples?
green apple, there always is. And yeah, I've got the carousel. So in my visual, sort of like if you're playing one of those games where you can pick a character and there's like a carousel that goes around, or like a zoetrope of images from the outside. But so I've got the green apple, then there's a red apple, then there's like the iPhone apple, and then there's like Eve and a snake, and it's like all the Apple associated images, and they can kind of.
Steve Jobs, you know.
I've got all the connotations of Apple in this like roticity.
You have a Rolodex.
Beatles,
I have a
Abbey
Rolodex
Road,
of every
yeah.
word in image.
Images.
But I have a tough
Apple
time
pie.
picturing the word itself. I'm terrible. I'm a terrible speller to this day. If it wasn't for autocorrect,
I
I
can
would.
spell fine.
I wouldn't be able to like
F-I-N-E.
attend school. They would have kicked me out a long
Autocorrect
time
has
ago.
made you weak. It's a crutch.
No, but it's always been like I would get like 99% in comprehension and then like 40% in spelling. I don't know how many peas are an apple? It's
That's
ridiculous.
because English is dumb.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. It follows no rules.
Yeah, try Danish.
Yeah.
Danes don't even know all
I
of
know,
their
but
own words.
this visualization, I'm sure it's why I can't draw. Why can't I draw? I don't know. I can't see it. I can't. Yes. I don't know. Maybe. I always used to wonder for gymnastics when I was growing up, the coaches would tell us to visualize ourselves doing the tricks. I can't. It doesn't
Oh no,
work for
yeah,
me.
you can't use the. Oh no.
I'd be like, ha! I don't know, I'd lie in bed at night, try to visualize. It just didn't go anywhere.
Do you, I know we gotta go, but do you daydream? Have you daydreamed?
I mean, I don't know, my brain thinks things.
She
Yeah, but do
makes
you, like,
lists. She
Do you
makes lists
imagine
and
a
she
whole
checks them off, and that's
scenario
how
that
we
you
have
can
this
see
show.
in your mind's eye? Like you watch, like it's basically like a dream, but during the day. No.
No, if I'm asleep during the day, yes.
Can you at least picture in your mind's eye a clock that's getting close to 2 hours?
That's the anxiety on my heartbeat. We haven't gotten even. We haven't hit the tight 90 in a very long time.
Yeah.
It's. I think.
I feel like we get
think you
close
push
when
it
one
on
of us
purpose,
is missing.
Justin.
Wait, what? Wait, am I getting blamed for the non-tight 90? All right. Here's what we do. What episode are we on right now?
872, right?
All right, pick a number between 772 and 872. Both of you pick
What
a number.
he's doing is
Oh, are you
making the
gonna
episode
add it up?
longer.
I'll add up.
You're making
I'll
it
add up.
longer right now, Justin.
Just pick one of those numbers. Each of you pick one of those. With the last 100 shows, just pick a number at random.
763.
763. Blair? Come on.
810.
810. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through both of these episodes. I got to pick one too. It's only fair if I pick one too.
And you can't listen to the podcast episode because they've been edited.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure I'm missing from. I won't be able to. I'll have nothing. All right, I picked 799. All right, so I got 3 episodes. I'm gonna clock who talks the longest in each of those episodes. I'm gonna put it into a spreadsheet and graph it out, and we can end all of this. Oh, it's Justin who's doing the talking.
Okay, but what you're missing is Kiki's supposed to talk the most.
But I also talk faster than both of you, I think, sometimes. It depends on the level of coffee. It really does.
Yeah, that's going to make a big difference.
Wait, are we in the after show already? I feel like we missed something.
No.
Oh.
That's why you're making the show longer right now. Sorry, Rachel.
This is the end of the show now. We've made it to the end, the very end. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I really hope that you did enjoy the show in its entirety. Shout outs to Fada for help with social media and show notes. Gord, Arnlor, everyone, thank you for manning the chat room. Identity 4 for recording the show. Rachel for your amazing assistance and editing. And I'd like to thank our Patreon sponsors for their generous support. Thank you to Teresa Smith, James Schofer, Richard Badge, Kent Northcote, Rick Loveman, Pierre Velazar, Ralphie Figueroa, John Ratnaswamy, Carl Kornfeld, Karen Tozzi, Woody MS, Chris Wozniak, Dave Bunn, Vigard Chefstad, Hal Snyder, Donathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, John Lee, Ali Coffin, Bandy Perrin, Gaurav Sharma, Ragan, Don Mundus, Stephen Alberon, Darren Myshak, Stu Pollock, for Andrew Swanson, Fred S104, Skyluke, Paul Runovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles, Jack Bryan, Carrington, Matt Bass, Sean and Dina Lamb, Greg McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Castenflow, Gene Tellier, Steve Leisman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Dana Pearson, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Remy Day, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Artyom, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul Phillips, Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Mountain Sloth, Jim Drapeau, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Nappy, O, Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Steve DeBell, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul D. Disney, David Simmerly, Patrick Picarower, Tony Steele, and Jason Roberts. Thank you all for your support of TWIS. And if you are interested in supporting us on Patreon, head over to TWIS.org and click on that Patreon link on next week's show.
We will be back Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific time, or Thursday, 5 a.m. Central European time, broadcasting live from our YouTube and Facebook channels and from TWIS.org/live.
Hey, do you want to listen to us as a podcast? Maybe as you harvest your closet mushrooms? Just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe as well.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes, links to these stories available on our website, www.twis.org. You can also sign up for a newsletter.
You can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at KirstenThisWeekinScience.com, Justin at TwistMutant@gmail.com, or me, Blair, at BlairBaz@twist.org. Just put TWIS, TWIS, in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered either into the spreadsheet that moved unexpectedly and disappeared everything, or into Kiki's mind's eye, where she won't be able to read it at all.
Oh, no.
Oh, gosh. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science, with only one S in the middle. At Dr. Kiki, at Jackson Fly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to tonight, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.